The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heaven will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because the redemption is at hand. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from the carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, and that they catch you by surprise like a trap. For that day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. Be vigilant at all times and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Good morning. A few weeks ago, I hosted a retreat here, one-day retreat for our parish staff. It was a great day, and a friend of mine from Ohio came up and was our retreat leader for the day. And during the course of the day, he asked a pointed question to all of us. In the last 7 days, he asked, "Where have you seen God?" And the staff, I have to say, I was impressed, were quick to answer. In encounters with others, with conversations with family, friends, parishioners, and people who they had met. And I'm embarrassed to say that I had to think about that for a minute. Where have I seen God in the last 7 days? I had to take a minute to think back to my week. And I think perhaps that I should be the one that answers that question probably the most promptly, with conviction, and probably with the greatest detail. But I couldn't. I had to think about it. And maybe that's because of how busy I am, and I get too fixed and focused on accomplishing the day's duties and the day's tasks, and because of that, because of my tunnel vision, sometimes, and I think often all of us can say the same thing, we miss the opportunities and the moments when we should have been paying attention to where we've met the Lord throughout the course of our day. But it's those little moments, I think, that often give us hope, that God doesn't abandon us, that He's still present to us, but being aware of that presence is probably sometimes rather difficult. As we begin the Advent season today, we mark this with a reverence of hope. That's what the Advent season sort of propels us to, a deeper sense of hope. The readings speak of the coming of the Lord. Tradition speaks of two very particular comings of Christ. In the first instance, what we're preparing for, right, is something that's already taken place over 2,000 years ago, is his birth in time and history, when the Son of God was manifest in the flesh, born of our Virgin Mary, and walked this earth. That's the first coming. And then the second coming, of course, is the future glory of Christ when He comes again in glory in the second coming at the end of the age. But tradition also speaks of a third coming. Right? Advent means, there's a Latin word, advenire, means to come to. Christ comes to us in a third way also. And simply in a third way by the grace of the sacraments, through our prayer and reflection and confession and Holy Mass, in the way that He reminds us of His presence to us each and every day. Christ comes to us in time. He comes again in glory, but He also is born again and again and again in our hearts, reminding us of His presence in our daily lives, in our hearts, in our minds, and in our souls. In this view of Christianity, in this view of our faith, that's what spurs us on to a deeper hope and a greater joy. There was a time in Jesus' time, there was a group of people known as the Stoics. They were itinerant preachers. They went around preaching the end of the age. They believed that the world would end every 3,000 years and that it would just be consumed by itself and then reboot. But it was it was a way of life that was going nowhere. Right? History just repeated itself. That's not the Christian view. That's not the Christian way. Christianity has, in a sense, a goal. Christianity has a vision and a direction. And that vision, that direction, that goal is to make and to believe that Christ is the centerpiece of our lives, the Lord of all, and that his kingship reigns. So in this post-Christian, post-resurrection, post-ascension era, particularly in the lifetime of the apostles, there was a sense of a readiness and an urgency of the return of Christ. You get a sense of that in the writings of St. Paul. Today is the day. Be on guard. Be ready. So in that sense, then we ought to live our lives too in the shadow of eternity. Because that day is every day for you and me. That we be found fitting to appear before the presence of our Almighty God. There can be nothing more exciting and more important to live the Christian life in this way. Because we forget at times, as I was reminded a few weeks ago, Christ is closer to us than we think. He's closer to us than we think. And that third coming of Christ, that third spiritual awakening, is his presence in our daily lives. To see him, to recognize him in his presence now means that we cannot get so bogged down and be settled in the everyday tasks that we have to accomplish. Not that they're not important, but to not be so caught up in the anxieties of life so as not to miss those moments and those opportunities when the Lord makes himself present to us. Because often they're simple and insignificant. And often it's a reminder that our God is closer to us than we think. Advenire, to come to. He comes in sometimes the smallest and most insignificant ways to remind us of his nearness and his presence in our lives. During this Advent season, then, may our fixed and focused attention now help us prepare for those moments to find a renewed joy in the presence of our God this day and every day.